We've done that before.
Hey, Cornell.
Cornell, and Ephraim and Yemi and Kalidos.
So these guys actually had power risers on in this film, which are like, you can actually run really fast in them, but they're kind of like horses' feet, aren't they?
Yeah, it was actually
they're kind of springy.
a really brilliant thing that Wendy Rogers, one of the visual effects supervisors, had seen these things on YouTube or somewhere.
Oh,
and
there's an advert with them.
Yeah, we hadn't had them last time. We'd used a lot of platforms and so on, and she kind of looked into them, and we got Alan Poppleton, the stunt coordinator, to kind of research them, and all these guys had to learn to walk in these stilts that held them about 18 inches off the ground. And it's a life-saving thing, because in these cases where normally we would have had to put in platforms and spend hours moving the platforms around, now they were actually free to move around.
Having said that, in that scene, I think they built them each a sort of little catwalk, because
and
it was over that rocky terrain, a little catwalk they all
the pot plants
down.
with power risers is one of those few cases I decided not to torture the cast.
But they could properly run in them, I mean, really fast.
It's good as horses. There's the where at the end when
they were running almost.
Wow, this is
an
a
awesome
cool
shot. The cable cam.
This was another cable camera we brought this one actually in from, I think it was from Austria or Germany, and it was able to do that extreme vertical drop. This is an interesting scene because it's actually shot in 3 completely different parts of this location and made to try and or tried to make to look like one location, and everyone had to be cabled and.
Yeah, they all involved quite massive drops though.
Yes. Now, we couldn't have done this scene in the last movie, actually. There's no way we could have shot the scene, because Scandi would never have gone that close to the ledge.
That's so true.
Whereas this time he didn't even really want a cable.
This time he just wanted a bungee.
Yeah. I ain't gonna lie.
Oh, this is an awful scene for me. When we were shooting it, it was weird.
I think it was really hard for you guys being, I don't know, I mean, I found it difficult.
I had a swollen lip.
Being in all these different locations and doing the different pieces at different times.
Andrew, have I ever told you I had a swollen lip in my class?
That's right, you did. How did you get your swollen lip?
So I was trying to curl it in because I didn't know how bad it was. But I'd been walking around and someone had left literally a bar at lip height just around the corner. So I turned the corner and literally turned and bang and hit my lip. On the way to going back to do that close-up you just saw. And I was thinking, it was the end of the day, and I was like, oh.
I remember you having to have a lot of ice shoved in your mouth at various times. I thought that was just
I remember that massive purple thing you had on your mouth. What the hell was that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
Look at that, you saw it so clearly there.
He just looks pouty.
Yeah. Like his Zoolander again.
We've got lots of people from the crew in here. We've got 2 assistants.
That's true. Mark and Marketta.
Didn't steal anything.
Shall we listen?
This is probably the scene that you performed the most, Ben.
Did I perform the most?
Remember, this is one of the audition scenes, wasn't it?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
This sounds a bit like a musical, this bit.
The big rousing speech.
Countable.
Supposedly.
Ha! That is rich coming from you, dwarf.
This was actually a very large stage in the Czech Republic at Barrandov Studios, and Roger and his team built this forest inside that kind of matched a forest that we had used in Poland, an area called Lost Rocks in the Stolar Mountains, Poland.
I couldn't believe this was inside.
It was a really, really great job, and all around was a big painting to kind of extend the forest into the distance, and we actually used this set for 2 different locations.
Was this where we shot the campfire?
Yeah, well, we were sleeping.
Campfire. It was redressed for the campfire. And the painting was, Walter came up with a way of relighting the painting to look like morning instead of night.
That shot reminds me of in the film when you look over the stone table at morning. I don't know what it is, it just reminds me of it. I think maybe it's because there's an opening.
Cornell is great in the scene. He just has such an incredible presence.
He's that kind of
majestic. Like everyone's in awe at the moment.
And Alambil, the Lady of Peace, have come together in
I wanted the Centaurs in this film to be a lot sort of wilder than the Centaurs in the last film. You know, the idea that the Narnians have been hiding in the woods for hundreds of years and they've just all gone a bit wild, and he's this kind of stargazing warrior.
Do you really think there could be peace? Do you? I mean, really?
Pattertwig the squirrel there, of course, was played by Harry Gregson William, the composer, who happens to have a very squirrel-like energy. His son thought he was going to be a minotaur. It's a little disappointed to find out his dad was actually a squirrel.
Brought us together. And together, we have a chance to take back what is ours.
And I actually got chills every take on during this scene when they, in a minute, they all kind of give me the salute with their swords, and they had their actual swords by their side, and they pull them out and raise them into the sky.
I love how massive the Centaur sword are, and I think the thing that really demonstrates, you know, the power of a Centaur's sword is in the first film when Aureus is fighting, and then he drops his 2 swords and puts them in general allotment, draws an even bigger sword, and starts to gallop towards the White Witch. You think, how big can your swords get?
It was quite funny with the boys all comparing sword sizes throughout the film that eventually the Centaurs just came in and won completely.
Exactly, Colin just come in and pull out his sword. It's like, oh well. This was a fantastic location.
Yeah.
I think one of my favourite places to shoot. It was actually in, although it looks very like the South Island of New Zealand, is actually in Bovic in Slovenia. And we scouted really all over Europe because I had so many scenes I had to shoot at the end of the movie at this location, so it didn't make sense to shoot in New Zealand. And we found this location that just looked so like the South Island, and it was a very unique opportunity because although it was a national park and it's a protected area, that had some landslides that had redirected the river. And they basically allowed us to build this huge bridge there on the understanding that we would actually restore the river back to its original path. So we were able to kind of use this, build this great set, have an incredible environment, and actually then help them with the environment afterwards, which is just a really unique chance.
And really built all this stuff. All those like machines, all those people were really there doing that stuff. It was kind of incredible to actually look at.
Yeah, this is also based on an idea we came up with when writing the script about how the Romans had attacked Bavaria, and they were outnumbered something like 20 to 1. And they built this bridge across the Rhine in like 10 days. The barbarians were so freaked out by the display of technology that they all fled. They didn't actually fight. When we were writing the script and looking for a device that was like a ticking clock of like the forces of the Telmarines building up, that's where we came up with this bridge idea. I think that was one of your favourite scenes, wasn't it, Georgie?
Oh dear, don't. I loved it because I loved doing the stunt, but
That was really on a ledge too. There was a huge drop there.
bit scary.
Didn't you actually almost fall as well doing that, Georgie?
Almost fall?
Yeah, like didn't Peter actually have to catch you a few times?
Yeah, I mean the stunties were there because they had to kind of
She had cables.
catch me, but I
No,
did.
no, I meant on that shot there.
Oh, and there, you mean when we're in the river? I thought you meant from the
No,
ravine.
me too.
Didn't you almost fall down that giant ravine?
Me too. I thought you meant that.
This is actually an interesting example of jumping around to locations that we were, we're looking down a gorge in Poland and then walking across a gorge in New Zealand. Just an example of how much we jumped around shooting this.
Into a studio.
And back into a studio in Prague.
Now this was a fun scene to shoot. This
one was quite tough, wasn't it?
This was awful because we were in a studio, yet there seemed to be so many bugs. Like that. And what, didn't you have to CGI out a caterpillar on my arm or something?
An ant, yeah, actually, on both of you. The funny thing is, it was such a big set that it had started its own, like, sort of microcosm. It had its own climate. It was, it was basically like
Needed to dress
forming
accordingly.
rain, exactly, and it was humid, and yeah, it was basically like being in a tropical forest.
I never noticed that Trumpkin is awake.
Yes, he's listening to the whole thing about you didn't want to believe in Aslan.
Oh, but yeah, I don't know. And the bug idea kind of stopped me from. It's weird.
Skandar was happy to be there.
Skandar was sleeping.
Skandar was actually asleep like he is now.
Skandar was asleep for most of the shoot, actually, if I remember right.
Yeah, Will, don't you start? You're actually sleeping as well.
Actually,
I'm trying
you did go to sleep.
It was so loud, Georgie.
I like that fade.
I like that crane up. It's cool.
The example of just how big the stage was as well, that we could get that high.
The light's good there. It's all very rosy. Like it's sunny.
I
Walter
love
did do a
this
good
scene.
job.
This is such a beautiful little scene.
Yeah, you're right, Skandar.
This really is sort of harking back to the charm of the first film, I think.
Exactly,
This
it
is
goes right back to the first film.
The most sort of nostalgic feeling to somebody who wasn't involved with making the first film.
Also, it
One
uses
of the
the
more lyrical
music.
moments, yeah. This was actually a really great point for us during the shoot, because this was when I knew I wanted Georgie to get into this kind of trance-like, dreamlike state for this moment. I asked you to bring in your iPod, remember?
Yeah.
And we actually played some of your dad's music, some of the music he had recorded. And the thing that I found is playing the music on the set is the whole crew relaxed so much that from then on we just played music.
All the time.
All the time, and during takes and between takes, for commentary.
I remember at one point though, Skandar put on some music that the Czech lighting guys didn't like, and they got the speaker and turned it on Andrew and everybody. And she was like, "What the hell?"
This was really funny because we had a stick and I think it was Lena with the stick, and they had a big ball of like wrapping paper.
That's right.
And they said, "This is a dryad."
And then for that moment, though, we had your mum standing on a box.
Really?
Yeah.
Remember, your mum was standing up there.
Did you use real petals or not?
No, that's all computer generated. This is the sequence was done by CFC. The effects were mainly done by Weta Digital, MPC Motion Picture Company in London, CFC in London, and by Scanline Effects in Germany and LA, who did most of the water effects at the end of the film. The Aslan was done this time by CFC London as well. Reaper Cheap was by MPC.
Such a huge amount of work that goes on with this after we finish shooting it, isn't there?
Or while we're shooting it.
Well, this I'm really proud of, actually, the work they did here, because one of the things I wanted to do in this film is have much more physical interaction with all of the CG creatures, and particularly to see, you know, Georgie snuggling up to Aslan and have it being convincing with her bearing her face in his mane and so on, was something that was very difficult to do last time that we were able to achieve this time. And I think it just makes him more real because she's actually in contact with him, even though it's just a dream.
That's really cool. Although I remember when it snapped and we just went, and you just said, "It snapped," and then you said, "Now look now." And I didn't know to look at it.
Well, I think what was really cool about how convincing you were about the fact that some of the time you were cuddling a big stuffed head, and other times it was me with my arm pretending to be Aslan's nose.
I was like patting it. Oh, this is the Viper place.
That's right, there were posters
Yeah.
around to look out for vipers.
Oh yeah.
That was reassuring when we walked onto set in the morning. There was a big caution sign.
Seek
People actually
medic
saw
immediately
vipers.
for
Yeah.
vaccination.
I actually at one point had this moment out of the movie and looked at the whole film and found that there needed to be this connectivity between Lucy and the trees throughout the film to kind of thread through to the end.
Yeah, because you cut out the scene with the dryad. Aslan? When we see the dryad.
Yes, the old dying dryad, yes we did. This was kind of a mistake because I had always intended when writing the script for that to be the first Minotaur the audience saw. Because then I thought for the audience it would be ambiguous as to whether Minotaurs were good or bad, and the audience of the last film would think they were bad. But then I put Minotaurs in the sequence that you did the rousing speech, so I kind of blew that.
Well, that's a really good point.
This was an awkward little fight to shoot because we were on a hill.
In changing light. Remember how many times we had to stop and wait?
And trying to get that sword right into the tree was not easy. They
made some a sort of plasticine section of the tree, so we weren't actually chopping into, you know, a real tree.
It was actually kind of hard. You had to get it right at the right angle.
The other funny thing about this location is as dailies started going into our editor, Sim Evan Jones, who was my editor on Shrek as well, he said, "You're shooting on a Shrek location." And I said, "What are you talking about?" He said, and I suddenly realised this looks exactly like the forest that Shrek and Donkey walk through in the first Shrek film.
Oh, wow.
And I'd never been here before. I don't know if it was just like some kind of weird thing that I was drawn to it, but it's almost exactly the same design as the forest in an animated film.
It was so beautiful. Just you could go for a little walk and be in the Czech Republic, and you had this view over the mountains, right on these rocks. When the sun would set, it was just absolutely beautiful.
You're not exactly what I expected.
Ooh,
The first of many.
What exactly did you expect? There was a very funny take of that,
There was a
actually,
very
which I
funny
was
take.
really tempted to put in the film. where Ben looked particularly sleazy and Anna just cracked up.
Sorry.
Oh,
Reaper Chief is great in this moment.
It's a very cute piece of
I
animation.
do believe courageous,
Courteous or chivalrous.
I was really happy. Adam Valdez, who was the animation supervisor at MPC, I think did a particularly good job with Reaper
And I
Chief.
have recently put it to good use, securing weapons for your
And he
army.
actually ends up being a soldier that Reaper Chief kills later on. So Reaper Chief gets to kill his creator.
And that's quite a good example of I think, being able to change dialogue after the fact,
Yes.
because you used Reaper Chief there not only to make him funnier, but also to
help explain the
to
scene.
help explain some of the next scene.
And this is all pretty much real as well, isn't it? That last shot.
You know, that's true. And actually, in watching it, I found that some people were confused. And if I kind of stepped out of knowing what was going on, you get confused by coming to the scene and not really knowing when Caspian came there, when the raid happened, who was there, was it the kids, was it Caspian and his team? And by just giving that one line to Reaper Chief, it took some of the confusion out of the scene and meant that you could actually pay more attention to what was going on.
And this, I have to admit, this is one of my favourite scenes in the whole film. I just think it's absolutely terrifying.
Yeah, it's frightening.
Particularly the performances from Sergio here.
Yeah, I do. I think Pier Francesco in this scene is great. This is actually the scene that Pier Francesco auditioned with, and he shot it really just himself as a close-up. And it was so captivating. I just was watching this close-up of just a single man doing one side of the scene and felt like I was watching a finished film. There's, again, so much going on without being said that I think makes it really interesting.
And this is the slap moment.
That's the third film in which Pier Francesco gets slapped by Sergio.
I wonder if he's drawn blood before, though.
That push-in's really nice as well.
It's one of the very few drops of blood, I think, actually sort of that you see in the entire film.
I love the shot in a minute when it's a serious close-up on Pier Francesco and he just looks over his shoulder.
Yeah.
That is amazing.
This was actually a really hard scene to shoot purely because of the weather. What should have been a very simple scene with some really great actors ended up going in and out of cloud and being just really difficult. Now, behind Pier Francesco, the people who he's just about to kill, a couple of our prosthetic guys and actually Damien's son, Emiliano.
Oh, yeah.
Who actually looks very good as a Telmarine.
He does.
Caspian is not a victim of this savage uprising. He is the instigator.
There is a lot of cast and crew in this, more than in the last film.
Yeah, it's just really fun to be able to do that whenever you can. Basically, anyone who could grow facial hair ended up in the movie. Which is why I wasn't.
I love this. Wow.
Yeah, that's a nice shot.
And it's like a bead of blood.
With a sword in it as well.
And now we are back in the Czech Republic, in lovely Ústí.
Lovely Ústí.
And this is one of those scenes where we had to walk and being very mindful of leaving space for the CGI creatures and all the horses' arses.
Yeah.
And ticks.
And ticks, yeah.
Oh,
This was the location in which we were all scared of Lyme disease, and
Warwick got a tick.
Warwick got a huge tick.
Warwick got a tick?
And he filmed it.
Oh, really?
And he showed it to us on his laptop and it's called My Tick.
They, both Warwick and Peter were very funny in a scene later on, which actually didn't end up in the movie, which makes it even worse. The scene when you were going off to the raid.
Yeah.
And every time I would call cut before they walked off the pathway here into the long grass, and they were just always so relieved. And then on the last take, I didn't call cut, and they were really mad at me because they had to walk out into the long grass with this fear of ticks.
And this is really sweet because there's one of the centaurs, the youngest centaur here, is played by Isi, who is our costume designer.
No, played by Gomez.
But played by her son.
Yeah.
Who's so cute.
And I remember you were actually playing this musical theme in particular to kind of encourage the feeling of nostalgia.
Lightning Bolt was Gomez's chosen name.
Yes, he got to choose his own name.
He got to choose his own name.
Did you put that on the credits, Andrew?
Yes.
Yes, he did, yeah.
Did you?
Yeah.
I love that shot as well. How did you do that with just a crane?
Yeah, big tall crane.